Hey y'all, welcome to Fitting in Homemaking. My name is Sarah, and today we are going to be gutting some pumpkins and making some roasted pumpkin seeds. So normally this would maybe be something that I would narrate as I do it, but I have very distinctive memories from, I don't know, growing up, I guess, where gutting pumpkins was just like a horribly boring and tedious thing to do. And I never really enjoyed it that much. I mean, when I was really little, it was like fun to play in the pumpkin goop, but other than that, it just took a long time. It was always freezing inside the pumpkins because we lived in northern Illinois, and it was just, late October in northern Illinois gets pretty darn cold most years. And, we were keeping the pumpkins outside, right? So I have my earphones in here, and I have my computer on the chair that you can see there to the right, and I'm watching the Absolute History channel. I have gotten really into these farm video series. So on this day I was either watching the Edwardian or the Victorian farm video series, and what they do, it's like literally the perfect TV show for me. It's exactly what I like in a TV show. But it's one historian and two archaeologists, and they are living on a farm as if they were living in that period. So they're having to make things with a blacksmith. The historian happens to be female, and she is the one who is taking on the traditional female roles, and she is going through how they did laundry back then and what some recipes that they used were, and how they cooked on the specific type of range or stove or whatever you want to call it. And she has her chores around the farm, and the two archaeologists have their chores. One specializes more in the plant crops that they're growing, so I think they grow wheat, and in another one, what else were they growing there? There was the wheat harvest, and then the hay harvest, I think, was the other thing that they did. And they also have animals on the farms, so the other archaeologists specialized more in the animal care, so there were pigs. The historian took care of the chickens, because that was traditionally more of the female role for that. They had a dairy cow, they had a small beef cattle herd, and I mean like just a few of them, and they were calving. And they had some sheep, because this happened in Britain. It's just, they're going through, they're giving you good educational content, they're living in the time, so they're gaining from that experience, which is super helpful, because then when you see artifacts from that time, or if you read text from that time, you have had the personal experience of doing those things. And they bring in expert craftspeople who have kept the traditional ways of doing things alive. So learning how making baskets, like if you need a basket, you won't necessarily be able to go out and buy one, you'd have to make one. If you need a new hat, that would be something that maybe you would make. It's just so super interesting. So when I'm looking down to the side distractedly, that's what I'm watching. They have a bunch of different series. I think there's a Tudor peasant one where they're living on a farm that is actually owned by a monastery, because that's how it tended to work back then. There's a Victorian farm series, an Edwardian farm series, and the one that I'm watching at the moment is a wartime farm series, so World War II farm series. And it's just really interesting, because I love history. My bachelor's degree is in history of art, but through that you also get to learn about socioeconomic conditions, you get to learn about religion. It just covers the breadth of humanity and what people were doing. So, like I said, this sort of thing is right up my alley. But I remembered from the past the gutting being super tedious, and for me it actually went fairly quickly. Now, this is sped up, which right now it might not look like it's sped up, but it is sped up about 3 times, because like I thought it was going to be tedious, and it's not that interesting watching someone gut pumpkins, right? So I got 2 pumpkins. I didn't think we were going to do jack-o'-lanterns this year. So my kids are 4 years old and 2 years old. So I thought their attention spans would not quite be there. But I also wanted to try to roast pumpkin seeds because I really like roasted pumpkin seeds. I haven't done that before. And as I thought about it more and more, and the prices in pumpkins kept going down and down the closer we get to Halloween, I thought, you know what, it's worth a try. And maybe, since I'm making the pumpkin seeds ahead of time, obviously I will need to gut the pumpkins first. Maybe getting the gutting process and just having these pumpkins ready for the kids to carve will be the way to go. And then it won't take too long to carve them. They'll be able to be involved. It won't be, kind of too much for their attention span. So what we ended up doing was I got the pumpkins ready, and then the kids, and this was my husband's idea. This is a really good idea by him, because I was like, not sure how carving's going to go, because the carving kit I got, like, all the things were like sharp, not blunted and sharp, like they were when I grew up. So my husband had the idea of having the kids draw a design, and then he would carve the design based on their drawing. So I have included that at the end of this video. It is so cute. So I got a couple of pieces of orange paper, and I drew a general pumpkin outline on them, and it had the kids draw on them. So you can see the kids drawing and how my husband carved the pumpkins for them. And that was a great way for them to be involved without them running around with, very sharp implements. And they just absolutely loved it. So now we have jack-o'-lanterns this year. And I'm really happy that we decided to do this, because before, like when my husband and I talked about doing jack-o'-lanterns, we're like, maybe that's a next year thing, but it really worked out. So here, in case the system is a little confusing, on camera, these are just my 3 mixing bowls that I love. They're just brightly colored. They make me happy. They're nesting, and I just have them lined up on the side here so that as I'm gutting, the bowl on the front, as you can probably actually see, is for pumpkin seeds that have mostly been degutted, right? The middle bowl is for things that have not been processed yet. So I think the first scoop or 2 that I took out of the first pumpkin, it's just, the seeds look so entwined in the guts. I was like, okay, I'm not going to deal with that right now. I can separate them out later. And then the red bowl in the back is just for the leftover guts without the seeds. Or if you see a seed in there every so often, sometimes it's just the husk of the seed where the seed hadn't actually developed inside. So I didn't pick those out of there. It's like with a watermelon, you have the white seeds versus the black seeds. So the undeveloped seeds are just being left in the guts as well. But I found it actually quite easy to get most of the seeds off if you just have like a gentle pulling motion, I guess. And the spoon that I'm using, normally I'm not the type of person to buy like one task things, but the spoon has a serrated edge on it, and I don't have grapefruit spoons or anything like that, which also have one edge serrated, but they're also really tiny, so that wouldn't work either. But highly recommend getting a scoop with a serrated edge to get all of the little hanging stringy bits out, which kind of towards the end of each pumpkin, you'll see I'm just kind of scraping it. Looks like I'm not taking much out. I'm trying to get the little stringy bits out so that when they get carved, they're fine. But it looks like we are about finishing up. I'm just trying to get those stringy bits out here. And my sweater sleeve kept falling down. It was really irritating because I didn't want to get pumpkin guts all over my sweater sleeve, but here we are. Oh, another thing I wanted to talk to you guys about. I was trying to remember, sorry. We went to our state fair last weekend. So the state fair here is kind of a big deal. Like it's, I grew up in a very agricultural area, but we did never go to the state fair, maybe because it was in the capital and we didn't live close to the capital. But we would go to local 4-H fairs and that sort of thing. And we had our town fair, but it was always in the summer because it was in the Midwest, and that's when the weather is good enough to have a fair. Here in North Carolina, we do live fairly close to the capital city, and the fair each year is just this huge thing that people come from all over the state. But we always go on, they have a half day that's like an accessibility day where they don't do like over PA announcements, obviously unless like someone's kid is lost or there's an emergency. But they don't let the vendors have any amplification, and the rides don't start until the afternoon on that day. So it's a much calmer, less crazy, overstimulating environment. And so we have always gone on the accessibility day, which even before I found out that I was neurodivergent, like I just enjoyed that more, shocking. But you also see, a lot of people with other disabilities where the overstimulation might just be way too much to handle. And I think it's absolutely lovely that they do that because we have such a nice time. We usually go and we listen to Smokey Bear's story. They have the Forest Service is there, and they tell Smokey Bear's story, and you get to have pictures with Smokey Bear and all these sorts of things. And of course, there's all the lovely fair food, and you go around, and they have the Village of Yesteryear. We didn't hit that this year, but it's like craftsmen doing their trades in traditional ways. And then, of course, you have all of the produce and all of the animals that are coming to the fair to compete. And this year there were a couple of exhibits that my daughter and I really enjoyed. I think my husband was off taking my son to the bathroom during one. So my daughter and I were circulating around the building with all of the produce. So they had like gourds and pumpkins and apples and various other kinds of, fall harvest produce. And there was one section that I hadn't seen before, because of course they have like the however many thousands of pounds huge pumpkins that are like absolutely ginormous and impressive to see. But we went to this one section, and it was actually produce submitted by, I think they were elementary school kids. And it seemed like what the assignment was to take a piece of produce and turn it into something else as a piece of art. And there was one who had taken an apple and made it into a crab. So in North Carolina, we're only about 2 hours away from the coast here. And it looked like, I couldn't tell if you had to use natural materials or not, but it looked like they had used some kind of seed pod for the front claws of the crab. And it just was such the perfect shape, and it just looked amazing. Of course, that was one of the ones that won first prize. And so my daughter and I really enjoyed that exhibit while we were waiting for my husband and my son to join back up with us. And then we went to another building with the animals, and of course they got to see the baby chicks that had just hatched that are, being kept warm. And they always have a sow with her piglets, and just various kinds of animals. But we actually hit the one of the show arenas during an actual judging. Usually we haven't hit that in the past, and it looked like it was a junior division, so like high school age kids showing off cows, and it looks like the cows weren't fully mature cows yet. But they were showing off cows, and they were walking them around the arena in front of the judge. And we watched that for just a couple minutes standing to the side. And then my husband wanted to go and look at some of the other vendors, because they usually have vendors around the outside of the building, and then the show rings are on in the center part of the building. And I think they had like 4 show rings in the center of that particular building. These are massive, massive buildings, right? And so we started to go around the edge, and my daughter talked to my hand. She said, "Mommy, I really want to watch the cows more." So I let my husband know, and then I got to go and sit on some bleachers with my daughter and watch them show the cows. And the judge was going around and talking individually to the competitors and giving them feedback. And then he was, on his microphone saying, this is what we're judging on. This is some of the feedback that I'm giving them so that they know for next time what to do, because he was giving feedback to the people who weren't chosen to place in that heat. And we were just watching heats. We didn't get to see the last competition where the winners from each heat competed against each other. But my daughter was just enthralled by this, and we got to see them position the cows in a certain way and, keep them happy by petting on them and this sort of thing. But it was just such a joy to be able to sit down with my daughter and watch that kind of thing, because that's kind of what I grew up around. I wasn't involved in farming or agriculture, but we had many field trips to the farm to learn about where our food came from, how to milk a cow, like all of these things. I think I've mentioned, maybe it was a comment on someone else's YouTube video, but they were talking about maple syrup. We had gone to the forest preserve and we had learned how to tap trees to get the tree sap to make maple syrup. But, these were the kinds of field trips I took as a child growing up, because I grew up in an agricultural area. So it was really fantastic to see my daughter, she has a lot of different interests, right? She's 4 years old, but she's very much a girly girl wanting to be a princess and wear dresses all the time. But she also really, really loves animals and is so compassionate. And she was just so interested in seeing how they were showing these cows. So it was nice to be able to spend about 15 minutes or so sitting there with her, watching this judging happen. So that was a really amazing time. And I hope if you have something like that in your area that you're able to go, make sure you do wash your hands after you go see animals being shown, because there's just animal stuff everywhere, right? And you don't want to go and eat fair food with your bare hands after being in a huge animal barn, essentially. That's, not sanitary. But yeah, so we had a really great time at the fair. It's our tradition to go every year, and it's just not having all the amplification and like vendors and people running the games, like yelling at you from every side and coming at you from every side, just makes a really much more pleasant experience for me. I'm sure some people thrive on that, but it's just, it gets to be too much. So yeah, we had a great time. I was able to get my funnel cake. That's my fair food that I like to get. And the kids got their ice cream. That's their fair food that they like to get, even though we get ice cream at other times, but that's just their traditional thing. And of course they had some of my funnel cake, and I think we ended up getting some fries and a hot dog or something like that. We try not to buy too much of the food, but we do get like one special thing for each of us that we really enjoy. All right, so back to what's happening in the video. You can see that I went ahead and I finished washing off the pumpkin seeds just in a strainer to try to get all the guts out, and then just kind of tapping them dry with a paper towel, and then struggling to get them off the paper towel, because of course that's what pumpkin seeds like to do. So here I'm just going to spread a little bit of olive oil, and we just prefer to use it in a squirt bottle and we're out. So doing a little kitchen maintenance here, refilling our squirt bottle with oil. But yeah, I just put a little bit of oil in here and then a little bit of salt, because this is one of the things where if you're not adding salt to it, it's not going to be right. And if this is your first video of mine where I'm making something, I tend to not use a ton of salt. But yeah, it's like not putting sugar in muffins if you don't put salt on pumpkin seeds, right? And these were still a little bit wetter than they probably should have been, but I was just not patient enough to like fully wait for them to dry out, because, I have other things to do, right? I figured that the oven would dry them out just fine, even if I had to bake them for a little bit longer. So we are about to take this over to the oven and go ahead. This is just one of those silicone mats that I have. I think What I looked up online, it said to roast them at 300. I did that for a while, and then I needed to actually make something else in the oven, and I think I turned it up to 400, and they still turned out fine. They were just taking longer than I expected because they were not dried off enough, right? But these were fairly easy to make. I tried to spread them out on here into a layer. It wasn't really in one layer, but it was, you know, evened out enough where everything got roasted pretty evenly. And the silicone mat underneath actually makes it a lot easier to spread out because they're very, very wiggly on it. All right, Sarah, we don't need to be such a perfectionist here. I must have just skimmed through this part instead of seeing how long it actually took me to spread these out. So this part obviously is not sped up like the earlier parts were. All right, babe, it's good enough. It's good enough. Just leave it. There we go. There we go. Time to put it in the oven. And as you can see, I'm still listening to my farm video as I'm doing this because I'm just obsessed with it right now. I'll link the channel, the Absolute History channel below, because they don't have a specific playlist for those videos or anything. Here we are getting them out of the oven after they are all roasted and done. Apologies if you can hear the dishwasher gurgling there. The camera was fairly close to that. And this is just me looking to make sure that they're all toasted. I don't know why I'm spreading them back out evenly, I guess to cool. Sometimes I do things that I just don't know. And let's pick up this fire hot pumpkin seed straight from the oven and try it out. They actually turned out pretty well. I'm glad they're not too salty. This is just me being stupid and not waiting because I had other things to do. They didn't turn out to be too salty, but just enough. I was happy with the salt level since I didn't really measure that. And they tasted exactly like the pumpkin seeds that I had growing up. So I was super duper pleased. I'm gonna bring you guys for a little bit of a closer look here. And they're just this really pretty yellow color, which is the reason why my daughter won't try them. She said that the roasted pumpkin seeds she got at daycare were white, and my pumpkin seeds were not the same color, so she doesn't want to eat them because they're, I'm like, okay. But here are the pumpkins, the carved pumpkins. This is my daughter's drawing of how she wanted the face to be. So that was a pretty good translation, I think. And then this is my son's drawing, which obviously he's 2. So what actually happened with his pumpkin is my husband was like, do you want curvy eyes or triangle eyes? And he said, curvy eyes. All right. Do you want triangle nose or square nose? Triangle nose. Do you want scary mouth or non-scary mouth? You know, and then, so he was getting my son's feedback as he did it. And here they are. I just put some battery-powered tea lights in them. They're up at our pumpkin display at the end of our driveway by our mailbox. And they are all ready for Halloween. Thanks so much for making it to the end of the video. Lots of random conversation in it, but that's how I roll. Please like, subscribe, comment, and I'll see you the next time. Bye.